Hello everybody, this is Jack Dennis and welcome to our fly fishing and tying channel. I hope you're all having a good start to the new year and out tying a lot of flies. We started a couple of weeks ago with our Jack Dennis and Friends fly tying session. Our first one was with Dave Allison, and I'm going to be showing you some from the past. One of the things I've been involved with my fly tying career is setting up fly tying theaters and been involved with the many conclaves that fly fishing groups and clubs have over the country. And they really highlight tyers that you may not have ever met. And one of the best ones is one in Idaho, both the Western Idaho Expo and the Eastern Idaho Expo, which is in Idaho Falls. They've been doing these fly tying get-togethers for a long time. We're talking over 30 years. So I want to do some highlights from some that I filmed in 2009 and 2010. And you'll get a chance to meet some names you know, and maybe some names you didn't know. And one of the nice things about tying at these expos is all the excitement and sounds of people going around telling lots and lots of fly fishing stories. Most of them may be exaggerated. But one of the nice things about the theater is you get a chance to listen to the tyers talk about their experiences and answer questions. I think you're going to enjoy them. We're going to start this week with several. We'll try to give you the most information. And I know some of you are going to say, wow, you know, I don't know about the materials. Well, these are really uncut. So, you know, you do your best on figuring it out. But I think you're going to enjoy the interaction with the crowd and with the tyers. And really uncut and I think extremely fun. Let's get going.
Chris, I understand that you're a school teacher, so teaching this class is kind of a busman's holiday, isn't it?
Well, yes, indeed. I've been a school teacher for about 20 years now, and anything having to do with teaching, I'm pretty good at it, so I enjoy doing this for part-time when I'm not teaching school.
So tell us about your fly tying background and what you like to tie and how you got involved with this.
Well, I got started tying flies when I was 9 years old, and I owe the love of fly tying and fly fishing to my father, who was kind enough to take me out and took an interest in me and got me started that way. And through my teen years, I didn't tie quite as much, but I've been tying flies. I'm now 50 years old, so I've been tying flies for 41 years. I enjoy tying dries mostly, and I enjoy the artistic and the innovative part of tying flies. I spend a great deal of time on the water, and most of my flies come from a lot of observation on the water and a lot of research and development, so to speak. I spend all summer on the road, and I live out of a trailer in the summer, and a lot of those flies are developed out of that trailer. So, fish all day, tie all night.
Tell us about what you're going to tie.
Well, I'm going to tie a couple of emerger patterns that are kind of unique patterns, I think. One of them has a step in it that I haven't ever seen anybody else do, and it's hard to say you invented something in fly tying because there's so many great tyers around, and if you think you've done it, somebody did it 20 years ago. But I'm going to tie an emerger that's a green drake emerger, and I use it for all sorts of mayflies, but it is what I call a foam and CDC emerger, where the CDC wings pop right out of a foam wing case. And then I will tie another emerger that I use quite a bit, and it's a CDC puff emerger, but it's tied in backwards by the tips of the puff, and then reinforced with just a tiny bit of super glue on the top so it will hold through quite a few fish. And also I'm going to tie a midge pattern that I use that's pretty effective. I use a lot of midge emergers, and this one has a poly wing that is looped and also a body of black flashabou.
Well, shall we take it away? I know you're from Boise,
Got
right?
one more pattern that I'm going to put in
okay.
there. They're not all dries. I've been experimenting a lot lately with streamer patterns, and I found a couple streamer patterns that have been just knock 'em dead streamer patterns, and this one has been responsible for quite a few really large fish, and I've kind of enjoyed the hunt on those and watching really, really big fish come out from under banks and chase those streamers. So that's the other pattern I'm going to do.
Well, we'll take it away. I was going to say that you are from Boise.
I am from Boise, and I'm also on the Whiting Pro staff. I do a lot of expos and demo tying for them, and you know, I'll do just about any kind of tying there is. So.
Well, we're looking forward to having you and your first visit.
Hi there, my name is Chris Williams, and I'm from Boise, Idaho. 50 years old, and I've been tying flies for 41 years, since I was 9 years old. My occupation for my real job is that I teach elementary school in Boise. Teach third graders, and I've taught fourth graders. I do some units actually in my classroom on fly tying and aquatic entomology too. So I try to integrate it in all parts of my life. Kind of fishing has been my passion, and tying flies has been my passion for most of my life. I kind of have focused on dry flies for the latter part of my life, but have gotten very interested in streamer patterns too in the past several years. So I've kind of been developing some streamers that are pretty effective as well. So today I'm going to tie for you a few emerger patterns, a midge pattern, and hopefully a streamer pattern as well too, and maybe we might even get to a dun, calibatus dun too. So if I don't explain something or there's a question that you have, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer questions, and might as well get started. The first one I'm going to do is a green drake emerger. It's a CDC and foam emerger, and it kind of, maybe somebody has developed the same technique, but I've never seen anybody use the same technique for this. And I donated a fly plate to this expo, and that's the pattern that's in that fly plate, and it's got all of the steps for tying that fly, that particular fly. There's 11 different steps in tying it, so take a look at that later out there if I don't explain it correctly for you. I'm using a partridge clinkhammer hook, size 12. I usually use Tiemco TMC 2488 for most of my emergers, but this one's a little bit larger, so I thought I would try this one on this pattern today. So I tried to bag up everything for the patterns, but for my shuck on this pattern, I use Antron dubbing, and I had started using Antron dubbing for shucks on emergers about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. I like the way that it shines, and I also like the softness of it as opposed to the more wiry Antron that you can buy. When it gets wet, it darkens up a little bit and it looks more like a natural shuck, I think. So the way I tie this in is that get up kind of the appropriate amount of it. And it might look like it has too much of a shuck on it, but once it gets wet, it kind of shrinks down a little bit. And I tie it in with a pinch wrap, so I just pinch it, pull straight down with the thread, and trap the antron like so. And then I'm going to take and pull this back, and I'm going to wrap right over the top of that, all the way back down the bend. And that's going to be the shuck. I'll trim it a little bit later. Come back here, make kind of a thread base. Now, I use this pattern for all species of mayflies, PMDs, calabatus, but when you're tying a bigger pattern like this green drake, I like to put an underbody of dubbing right here. The body itself is going to be a turkey biot, olive. Saliva is the one of my favorite fly tying materials. Now there's two ways that you can tie a turkey biot in when you wrap it. There's a little notch, hopefully you can see it right there on this side. If that notch is facing this way, that will give a furled body. If you turn it around and face the notch the other way, it will give a smoother body. And on my duns, I usually tie with a smooth body, and on the emergers, put a furled body on them. So I'm going to turn it the opposite direction. And just trap it in between the thread and the hook, and I'll leave it sit there for a minute. And then, as I said, I'm going to put an underbody of just super fine dubbing. Just build that up a little bit. And we'll capture the biot with the pliers. As I wrap it, you can kind of see that the furl kind of stands out. Trim that off. The thorax on this pattern is razor foam, which is a thinner cut of foam, and it's translucent gray. I just will tie that in the wrap and wrap over the top of it. I'm going to use both of these pieces for the thorax, or for the wing case, I'm sorry. And so I'm going to pull them back and wrap over the top of them. And just let them stand out like that. Now, here comes the kind of unusual technique. And for this, I use a dubbing needle. I wanted to have a way that it kind of looked like the insect was hatching out of the wing case. And I couldn't figure it out. I played with it for a long time before I figured out how to do it. I kept breaking the foam when I tried to do it. And I really like CDC patterns because of the softness and the way they look alive. So I wanted CDC wings, and I wanted them to poke through the foam, and I wanted the foam for the extra floatability. So what I finally ended up doing was taking a needle and making a hole through the foam like that. And then I take the needle out and use a threader and slide it right through the hole. And the next thing is to find my CDC wings. I tried lots of ways to pull these through, and I finally found one that worked pretty well. So what I do is match them up so that the concave sides are opposite each other. I'll stroke the fibers all up and then kind of peel off the rest that I'm not going to use. Now, what I want to do is put the CDC inside the dubbing threader and pull it back through the foam, and it took a long time to figure out how to do that. So what I ended up doing is wetting the CDC down. And then it slides into the dubbing threader just by the tips, because if you go too far down, and then it will break off the foam. So then I'm going to pull it back through, and it just pops through like that. Then I'll take a couple of loose wraps to secure that right there. And now I can position those wings any way I want. So if they're not the right length, I can move them one way or another. That's pretty close, but I'm going to take and shorten them up just a little bit. Once I've got them where I want, then I'll take a few more wraps over the top of them and clip off the butts. And now we're going to dub the thorax. So a little more of the super fine dubbing. I'm going to turn it over to make sure that I cover up the thread wraps with dubbing. And you notice I left a little room up front and put just a touch more dubbing on there. But I still want to leave a little bit of room because I'm going to pull that wing case over, and also I'm going to put a couple wraps of hackle there. I'm kind of fortunate that I work as part of Whiting's pro staff, so I have access to quite a bit of of great feathers, and this is one of my favorites. It is available sometimes in the stores. It's called Speckled Badger, and I use it on a lot of different patterns, but it has a lot of speckling in it, and it has several different colors in it, so I'm kind of always one of those people that's looking for different, I usually like the capes and the saddles that most people won't buy in the store. Okay, so I'm going to tie in that hackle, and then I'm going to put 2 wraps up front and tie it off. I started using this little nail nut tool as a half hitch tool a long time ago, and I kind of never stopped. So now I'm to the point where I'm going to pull the thorax over, and one of kind of the neat things about this pattern is that the foam is spongy, so it enables you to kind of put that wing wherever you want. If I pull it, I can pull it straight up. If I put the hole farther up in the foam, I can even pull it so that the wing is pointed out over the eye. So what I like for this pattern is that it is at about a 45-degree angle back from the foam. So pull that wing case over and tie it down with a few wraps. I'm going to go in and clip out that foam and half hitch one more time. When I'm fishing this pattern, usually the last thing I'll do is I'll flip it over underneath and clip out a V, because I don't want this one to be heavily hackled at all. I just want those legs to be barely creeping out. Clip off the shuck, and that's the finished pattern. Does anybody have any questions? Or I call it the CDC and foam emerger. It's been responsible for quite a few fish, so in a lot of different patterns. But